Imagine a world without childhood. No school, no toys, no safety. For millions of children in Victorian England, this was reality. Their lives were filled with long hours, dark spaces, and repetitive work that barely kept their families alive. This wasn't a secret, it wasn't rare, and it wasn't seen as cruel. It was expected, it was accepted. It was simply normal. To understand why, we have to forget what childhood means to us today. In the Victorian era, it wasn't a protected phase of life. It was just the earliest stage of work. Most working-class families lived on the edge of poverty. Even with both parents working, their income was unstable. There was no welfare, no unemployment support, and no guaranteed education. If a family struggled, every single member was expected to help out, including the children. Many kids started working when they were just 5 to 8 years old, some even earlier. There were no reliable birth records, so age limits were either vague or completely ignored. Inspections were rare. If a child was old enough to follow instructions, they were considered ready for the workforce. And employers preferred hiring children, not despite their age, but because of it. Children were smaller, cheaper, and easier to control. They could crawl into narrow spaces that adults couldn't reach. They could work long hours without complaining. Most importantly, they could be paid far less than adults. For employers, this was just good business efficiency. For families, it was about survival. Inside the massive textile factories, children worked beside machines that never stopped. Their tiny fingers would tie broken threads and clean moving parts. They carried heavy materials between looms. A typical workday lasted 12 hours or more. The factories were deafeningly loud, incredibly hot, and filled with thick dust. Injuries were a daily occurrence. Crushed fingers, hair caught in machinery, lost limbs. Most of these were just seen as unfortunate accidents, not as reasons to change anything. The work underground in the coal mines was even more dangerous. Children worked deep beneath the earth. Some spent their entire day in darkness, opening and closing ventilation doors to let air through. Others had to push heavy carts of coal through tunnels that were too narrow for adults. The air was thick with coal dust, the darkness was constant, and the danger of a collapse was always present. Many suffered from permanent health damage. Some never even survived their childhood. And yet, all of this was legal. One of the most horrifying jobs was chimney sweeping. Small children, often boys, were forced to climb inside narrow winding chimneys to scrape out the soot. The spaces were claustrophobically tight, the air was toxic, and the heat from recent fires could be overwhelming. Some children would get stuck, others suffocated from the fumes. Their deaths were often blamed on bad luck, not on the brutal system that put them there. But not all child labor happened indoors. Many children worked on the streets, selling newspapers, shining shoes, running errands, or carrying goods. Street work was unstable and dangerous, but it was considered honest work. It was seen as better than begging, and certainly better than being idle. Education was available, but it was a luxury most couldn't afford. The majority of schools charged fees, and attendance was rarely consistent. Families simply couldn't afford to lose the income of a working child. Work meant food on the table. School was just a hope for the future, and hope didn't pay the rent. By the middle of the 19th century, some labor laws started to appear. The Factory Acts introduced age limits and restrictions on working hours, but mostly just on paper. In reality, factory inspections were announced in advance, records were falsified, and children were often hidden away when inspectors arrived. The fines for breaking the law were small, while the profits from cheap labor were huge, which change came very, very slowly. Perhaps the hardest truth to accept is that most of Victorian society was okay with child labor. It was seen as a form of discipline, a way to build character and preparation for a hard adult life. A working child was considered moral and productive. An idle child was seen as a potential danger to society. Most parents weren't cruel, they were trapped. Sending a child to work meant the family could eat. Keeping them home meant starvation. There was no safety net, only impossible decisions with devastating consequences. For the children, there was no real childhood. They woke up early, worked punishingly long hours, and came home exhausted. Play was a rare luxury, rest was limited. For many, this was the only life they ever knew. By their early teens, many of these children were already physically worn out. Some managed to move into adult jobs. Others were dismissed after being injured or becoming too old. Work didn't guarantee an escape from poverty. It only delayed the family's collapse. The system of child labor survived for so long because the entire economy depended on it. Factories needed the cheap labor to stay profitable. Families needed the income to survive. And the government avoided taking on the responsibility of caring for its poorest citizens. Everyone seemed to benefit except for the children. And because it was so common, it felt completely normal. Of course, there were critics and reformers who fought for change, but progress was agonizingly slow. Empathy for these children arrived late, and the enforcement of new laws arrived even later. In Victorian England, children worked not because society was intentionally cruel, but because it was built that way. Poverty demanded labor. Labor replaced education, and hardship became routine. This was not a hidden problem, and it was not illegal. It was normal. For many families, sending their children to work was the very last thing they could do to stay together. When that failed, families didn't just disappear. They were separated, and they were placed somewhere else. That too was considered normal.